Florida voters will have three amendments to consider for the state constitution this election cycle. I have Scott Maxwell here. So, Scott, these typically can be very confusing, a lot of fine print to make your head spin. And while there's only three, there are some cases on these. I'm curious, why are they always so confusing?
Yeah, I think sometimes it's by design, and sometimes it is because they don't know any better. But yeah, this year is no exception. The good thing is there are only three, but I thought I would make an effort to try to break them down into sort of plain speak for folks.
Yeah, let's start with this First Amendment. And considering the storm Hurricane Ian just came through, it seems to be on the forefront of a lot of people's minds. And this one has to do with the prevention of flooding and taxes. And have to say, it sounds kind of reasonable.
It does. I think that the notion behind this one is basically that if someone spends money on their house to improve it, to make it more flood resistant, then they will not have to face greater taxes on whatever the improvements they did to their property. That's sort of the simple way, the plus size. The hiccup is, there are two hiccups with it though. One, the language is very nebulous about what counts as flood resilience. And the second thing is this vote doesn't actually put this law into play. What it does is authorizes the legislature to then take action to make it happen. And you sort of have to trust the legislature as to what they're going to do. So I ended up saying I'm voting no on this one because I don't trust the legislature. The Tampa Bay Times was one of the editorial boards that said no. They threw out the scenario that someone could add an entire second or third story to their home for recreation purposes as and claim it was for flood resilience as an abuse. I view it as a good idea that isn't really well thought out, and I'm not a big fan of trust us, we'll figure it out later amendments in the Constitution. But if you want to go all for encouraging flood resiliency, you might vote for it.
Yeah, so Scott, this amendment too, this is the one that seems the most confusing of the three, because you read the title and you automatically almost don't understand what it even means.
You're exactly right. That's because this process only happens once every 20 years. And you may remember, Rich, this happened last in 2018. It's where the most powerful people in the state sort of get more power. The governor, House Speaker, Senate President, Chief of the Supreme Court, they appoint 37 members to a commission. And that commission basically looks at the Florida Constitution and says, here's all the ways we want to change it. And in 2018, they made more than a dozen, I think it was up to 13 proposed changes. And some of them were kind of loopy in how they put things together. One, for instance, called for a ban on vaping in restaurants, which maybe people like. But to approve that, you also had to take a vote on nearshore oil drilling in the Gulf, which didn't really make sense, those two things together. People who like this idea, like the idea of citizens theoretically being able to go to this commission and say, here's how a change I'd like to have in the Constitution. Like that's how term limits got put. But others, such as me, think this is just sort of a chance for powerful people and special interests to play games with the Constitution every 20 years. So I'm voting yes to do away with this every 20 years. But if you like the idea of giving citizens another opportunity and think we can do better with it in the future, you'd vote no.
Okay, well, let's head on to this third one. And this one actually seems to be trying to do some good as far as with the housing markets, things like that. And this would give property tax breaks to certain workers. The concern with this one is maybe it's a little bit too narrow.
Yeah, I think this is another one that sounds good when you read it fast. It basically would call for an extra $50,000 property break for certain professions like teachers, law enforcement, medical technicians, firefighters, paramedics, and military. And I think a lot of people like that idea. I like that idea. However, there are two problems with it. One, it doesn't help all the members of those professions. It only helps members of those professions who own homes. And second of all, it leaves out a lot of other professions that I think people would generally consider to be altruistic, such as those who work for nonprofits and mental health as caregivers for elderly or disabled folks, and even the support staff people at schools. Those aren't included. So you vote yes if you're okay with giving just those folks and just those folks who own homes a better benefit. You vote no if you think it's too narrow.